Hi guys, I'm Erin and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing the anti-TBR tag. And so this tag originated on the channel Nicole and her books, which I'll link the original video down below. So the first question, a popular book everyone loves that you have no interest in reading. So my answer for this is Network Effect by Martha Wells. This is the 5th book in the Murderbot series and the first full-length novel. I read the first 4 novellas and they were okay. I liked the first one. I thought Murderbot was super fun, but the other 3, Murderbot continued to be the only thing I enjoyed in the books, like the character. I just never really cared about the plot at all, so they were just kind of a drag to read. And I realized that a full-length novel of it would be too long for me to want to get through, and I would probably struggle through it or DNF it. So I consider my Murderbot journey done with the 4 novellas, and I think Murderbot is an entertaining character that was fun for one novella and just alright for the other 3. So, number 2, a classic book or author that you don't have any interest in reading. This is a classic that I remember getting talked about a lot in high school that several of my friends read that we never had to read for class. That I just they all told me I wouldn't like, and that's Catcher in the Rye. I just had so many friends tell me I'd hate this book, and from what I've heard about it, I just think I would. I'm not even sure exactly what it's about. I think it just follows what Holden Caulfield around, and I think what everyone's told me is that I would just hate him, and if you hate him, then you're not gonna like the book. So I have no interest in reading that. As far as genre classics I am not interested in reading, I would say I'm not interested in reading the rest of the Dune series. I read the first one and quite liked it, but I just have no desire to read the others. I've kind of honestly forgotten what happened in Dune. I just remember that I liked it a lot, but I don't remember much about it. That's kind of a genre classic. I guess the classic is Dune more than the series, but I just don't have interest in reading the rest of the series. The next question is a problematic author whose books you have no interest in reading. For me, that answer is Marion Zimmer Bradley. She is a fantasy author who I think her most famous work is The Mist of Avalon, which is an Arthurian legend novel, which actually kind of sounds like something I would enjoy, but a lot of stuff came out about her about a lot of child abuse, and that's a line, and that kind of just turned me. I hadn't read any of her books at that point, so I don't have any nostalgic feelings towards the books. I know I've seen some people who read the books as children, and so they just have a lot of nostalgic feeling towards the books, and I just I never read her stuff, and so after hearing that I kind of just left a bad taste in my mouth because that's pretty awful, and so I just decided not really interested in reading those books. The next question is an author you have read a couple of books from and have decided their books are not for you. So I have 2 answers for this. I have one non-fantasy answer and then one pseudo sort of fantasy author, just because so my non-fantasy author is a romance author, which is Jasmine Guillory. I've read 3 of her books and they're all just fine. I just kind of had the most recent one I read was better than the other 2. But the other 2, I just they're just not great. Her books kind of feel like she asked a teenager what they thought happened in romance books and then wrote that. And then I just don't like them. I think I have issues that are kind of specific to each book. But yeah, I don't really like her writing. And I just never really liked the romances in her books. And so I read 3. I'm not really actively interested in reading her books anymore. And then my other author, who's sort of fantasy, sort of not, is Stephen King. I've read 8 Stephen King books because I read 11, 22, 63 in high school, and then I read the entire Dark Tower series in college, and I thought 11, 22, 63 was alright. I think I gave it 3 stars. I thought it could have been a lot shorter, and there was a whole half the book I just didn't care about. And then The Dark Tower, I did enjoy reading. I liked that one. I did have some up and down feelings on. Book 4 of The Dark Tower, Wizard in Glass, so good, loved that one. The book 6 of Dark Tower, Song of Susanna, hated it. And all the others were just good. So I'm definitely glad I read The Dark Tower. It's such a popular and well-known series that I'm definitely glad I read it, but I just finished those books and I was just was not left with any interest to pick up any of his other books. A lot of them don't interest me in general just because he writes more horror than fantasy, and so I'm just like not as interested in that. But nothing about his books really made me want to read more of his writing either. So I'm just like not super interested in Stephen King. The next question is a genre you have no interest in, or a genre that you tried to get into and couldn't. This is hard because I don't really know that I have an answer. There used to be genres that I like. If you asked me a year ago, I would have had a better answer. But there's not really any one genre that I just absolutely would never pick up. So my answer, I think, is going to be more genres I don't tend to do pick up, or like ones that I'm not like pulled towards, but I will occasionally read books from them if it's kind of a genre mix or like a really hyped book. And so was horror. This is one of those, if you'd asked me a year ago, I would have said I avoid horror. But I read Mexican Gothic and Home Before Dark last year, which I believe are both mainly categorized as horror, and enjoyed them. And there's two more new releases from last year that are also largely classified as horror: the Southern Book Club's Guide to Vampire Slaying and Plain Bad Heroine. I'm interested in both of those, despite them being categorized as horror. So I would consider horror a genre I'm not actively into, but would pick up from occasionally. It's not one that I'm necessarily looking for recs, but if I happen to hear about ones that are good, I might again pick them up. And the last genre I would consider one I don't really go to, but would sometimes, is paranormal. Again, like horror, if you'd asked me a year ago, I'd say not into paranormal. I kind of burned myself out on paranormal in early high school when I read everything young adult paranormal, and I just got burned out on it. And so I just like was never interested in picking it up again. Like adult paranormal series just didn't interest me. But last year, I picked up the Hidden Legacy series by Alona Andrews, and I actually quite enjoyed it. So I'm no longer written off paranormal entirely. It's, again, like horror, is not a genre I'm in any way actively looking to pick up more of, or actively looking for new releases or recs in. But if I happen to hear about one, or if it ends up being involved in like a challenge, like when I did my Goodreads romance reading challenge that had paranormal in it, I wouldn't be opposed to picking it up again. Next question. A book you have bought but will never read. This one is hard because, like, if I bought it, I like to think I will read it, you know? Like, I also, if I had to guess which physical books I bought that I wouldn't read, I would have to say these two, Castle of Kings and The Historian. I wouldn't say I'm not interested in them, but these are both kind of impulse used bookstore buys. And I got at the end of 2019, and I just like haven't really felt compelled to pick them up since. So I like to think I will read them one day, but who knows if I will. But those, out of all these like books I have here behind me that I haven't read, those are the most likely ones to not get read, I think. A series you have no interest in reading, or a series you've started in DNF. So I have an answer for each half of that question. And so series I'm not interested in reading is the Dresden Files by Jim Butcher. This is uber popular, and several booktubers I watch love it, but I don't know. I just like never felt compelled to pick it up. It just like doesn't call to me. I do still technically have it on like my Goodreads TBR. That's mostly because I really liked the Codex Alera series, and so I'm like, it's on there just because I liked another of Jim Butcher's works. But those two series are wildly different, and so I'm not really interested in the Dresden Files. But I think if I ever really got the urge to pick up like an urban fantasy that isn't like a paranormal romance urban fantasy, Dresden would be the one I would try, just because I did really like Jim Butcher's other works. And then for series I started in DNF'd, that would be the Lightbringer series by Britt Weeks, which is, I'm so disappointed that this is on this list. Truly, I remember seeing it around for years. I always thought it sounded really good. I finally picked it up last year. I read The Black Prism, and it was okay. I really debated reading the second one, but one of my main problems, well, one, I really disliked Kip, one of the main characters, and he's like one of the main characters, and I just didn't like him. I found him very annoying. I didn't like reading his point of views. And then the second thing I didn't like is I really dislike the prose. I am not one to generally have strong feelings on prose. I did not enjoy it. I had to like force myself to finish it because I just didn't enjoy reading it. And so I was like left that book. I was quite interested in how the story was going to go. Like I was genuinely interested in many parts of the story. I liked a lot of the characters. She's not one of the main ones. But the prose was just so hard for me to read that I was like, it's going to be better to just not read the second one, because I'm not going to enjoy the reading experience, because I do not like reading his. And so the last question is a new release you have no interest in reading, and that would be The City We Became by N.K. Jemisin. So I've read one N.K. Jemisin series. I read the Broken Earth series, and I enjoyed it. It didn't leave me super clamoring to read her other stuff, but I am still interested in her the Killing Moon duology and the Inheritance trilogy. I think I am still somewhat interested in picking this up. But The City We Became just doesn't sound like my cup of tea at all. I heard a lot about it last year because it was a pretty popular new release. It also seemed to be somewhat polarizing. And I just I don't know, the concept, the concept of this personified New York borough just doesn't appeal to me at all. I have no interest in New York City. And so I just kind of have no interest in picking it up. But yeah, so that was my anti-TBR tag. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in my next video.